Happy Sunday. What's going on, everyone? It is GC Live Sunday Reset with your host, yours truly, Jack Veltri here. We got a lot to talk about today. Got some men's basketball to talk about. They are now 0-5 in SEC play, and obviously that is not looking too good right now. But we're also going to be talking a lot of women's basketball as the Gamecocks get set to take on Oklahoma today in a top 15 showdown out at CLA. Before we get rolling, hope you guys are all doing well. Just want to talk to you guys real quick about our main sponsor of the day, Clint Hammond of CMG Home Loans. If you're in the market for a home or you need help with your mortgage, but you don't know where to begin, Clint is your guy to call. He's been in the mortgage industry for more than 20 years, and he's a lifelong Gamecock fan and a longtime supporter of Gamecock Central and all of our GC Live programs. You'll see his name above us here on every single live stream that we do. If you're watching right now. But if you're listening as well, you can give him a call, 803-422-6797. The NMLS number for him is 71597. And you can also go to ClintHammond.com. So thank you to Clint. All right, so we're going to start out talking a little bit of men's basketball. And Craig asks, when's first pitch? I don't know what you're talking about. I'm joking. But, yeah. Baseball's around the corner, but we got some basketball to talk about. And to help me out, my guy, George Bagwell, who had to cover yesterday's game.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. It's, these are tough times right now. And, South Carolina is off to a really rough start in SEC play. There's no doubt about it. 0-5 to start. George, hope you're doing well. Appreciate you joining me. Talk some hoops. Yesterday, South Carolina lost 82-62, and I want to start second half. It's all tied at 47. South Carolina is in a battle. It's continuously going back and forth with each team kind of like reclaiming the lead to start the second half. And South Carolina actually looks like, okay, with 12 minutes to go, they're looking pretty good. But the rest of that game, a 35-15 run, basically just the fourth quarter of the game, essentially. And South Carolina just had nothing to show for what they had already put together. George, can you just talk about that final stretch of the game where what went wrong for South Carolina? Was it just a breakdown on defense? Was it just the inability to score? Was it a mixture of everything? What would you pin it down to?
Yeah, I mean, if something could go wrong, Murphy's Law there, it did go wrong. That 7-0 run after it hit 47 all, that I think was the straw that broke the camel's back. That Forsyth, I think, had a 3 to make it 54-47. South Carolina never really looked at that level of competitiveness again after that. But of course, CMB being in foul trouble, I think that impacted the offensive flow. Then defensively, it allowed Oklahoma to just get inside a lot with Godwin. From there, South Carolina just didn't have the ability to come back.
Yeah, it was. Again, the other problem is, I think, and here's a good point brought by Craig that I was going to get to here. He says we just have any shooters. I think he meant to say we just don't have any shooters. Yeah, look, I think South Carolina, and I know you mentioned this in your article yesterday, your game story, that this team is really missing Jamari Thomas right now, and that's especially true because that's your point guard. And it's not to say Jacoby Wright can't play the point, but he's not necessarily like, and Jacoby's a good player and stuff, but he's not your one. That's Jamari Thomas, and that was Talon Cooper and last year, and Michi Johnson the year before that. So you're putting Jacoby in a role he hasn't really had to play before because he's normally at the 2, it seems like, or even the 3 in some cases. But still, this team just really seems to lack not just the point guard position, but they also seem to lack the consistent shooting. And again, they hit 9 threes yesterday. Like that's not a bad number to look at. They shot 41%, which compared to Oklahoma shooting 56% is not good at all. But yeah, I mean, this team just seems to really not have consistency at the guard position. Like Zach Davis, 2 of 9 from the floor. Jacoby was actually a lot better yesterday, I would say. 4 for 8 with 2 threes, and Morris Ugasuk continues to play pretty well for this team. Probably, I think he's probably their best guard right now. But again, you're not getting enough out of these other guys. Like Arden Conyers really struggled yesterday. 6 points, 2 of 9 shooting, 0-4 from 3. I mean, how much of a concern is it for you that they just don't have the go-to type of guard that you can rely on like they have in the past?
Yeah, it's a concern. I think it's the team's number one concern right now. Jamari Thomas was catching a bit of flack from the fan base pre-injury, just because he wasn't at the level of Talon Cooper. But coming from the MEAC and then averaging 12 points a game, 3 assists, not every mid-major transfer is going to be a Dalton Connect type of guy, a Chaz Lanier type of guy. But he was possibly the most underrated part of the offense. He kept it flowing. He kept it going. He was able to facilitate shooters, able to get Jacoby right in like a catch and shoot type of role, which is more of what he typically does, what he's good at. And asking Jacoby to play the one, which of course the team now needs, that's not his natural role. He's not really excelling at it, but it's not his fault. And then with Morris Ugasuk, and a question that we thought that South Carolina fans thought they would never ask last year, where would this team be without Morris Ugasuk? That half-court shot, I don't know if you saw that one.
Oh, it was a nice shot. It was a nice shot. They desperately needed that going into the break.
He has been a revelation for this team, shooting-wise.
Oh, it's been insane. He's been so good for South Carolina this year. And honestly, man, whenever Jamari's going to be the first one to come back, I would assume, unless there's any setbacks, he should be on his way back here in probably like 2-3 weeks, I would guess. But I think you keep Morris in the starting lineup, man. As long as he continues to give you play like this, because he's giving you, he gave you 20 points against Vanderbilt. He gave you 15 yesterday. I think if he continues to play like at that pace, he's been South Carolina's best player these last few games. CMB aside, Morris is your best shooter right now, and it's not even. He's been your best shooter from 3-point range. It seems like all year. So, yeah. Look, South Carolina is missing Jamari for sure. I will also say I think they're missing Miles Studi desperately as well, because I know Miles hasn't had that great of a season, but the one thing you can always rely on with him, and we've seen flashes of it. The Clemson game is the one that really stands out. He's a great spot up shooter. Like you can have him from the corner. He that's his bread and butter right there from the corner. But he's also a guy that I think he's your outside of Morris in the starting 5 typically. Miles is probably your go-to guy from a shooting standpoint, especially from 3-point range, that you can count on. He's going to be able to hit free throws. Like we've seen it last year, saw it a little bit this year, but I think they're just missing those two guys a lot right now. They were able to kind of get through it for the first 2 games, only losing by 3 points apiece, but still you're losing games. And this one, it really felt like it shouldn't have been a blowout. That's the thing. Like you end up losing by 20 points to an Oklahoma team that, let's be real, hadn't been playing very good in conference play at all. They were 13-0 going into that Alabama game to open SEC play, and they got ran over. And then these next 3 games after that, they lost all 3 to move to 0-4. And then they're making Oklahoma look like a team that has been great all year. Which to be fair, they were not too long ago. But again, you're not going to beat a team that shoots 56% from 3. I'm sorry, from the field, 47% from 3, 85% at the line, and they only have 12 turnovers. And again, South Carolina had 16 turnovers yesterday. That's not as bad as the 25, obviously, but when you're consistently turning over the ball, it's a real issue that Zach Davis had 4 turnovers after having, I think, 5 the other night. CMB had 3. It's just like the turnovers are killing this team. And you mentioned that again in the title of your story yesterday. What did you see from the Gamecocks with the way they were just turning the ball over? Did it look anything better than the Vanderbilt game or no?
From a statistical standpoint, I would say better than Vanderbilt. 25 turnovers, that's tough. But cutting that down to 16, I guess, is an accomplishment. The first half was rough. 12 turnovers, I believe, in the first half, so just 4 in the second. But the lack of a true point guard is just really impacting this team. Whether it's Jacoby at the 1 or Morris at the 1, that role is never going to fully utilize their strengths. And then the lack of CMB or Pringle that hit an outside shot affecting the team's spacing is also creating these turnovers. where the ball gets down low, and the post players are either covered up or they can't pass outside. Last year, of course, the team had BJ Mack. He could shoot outside. Talon Cooper could shoot outside reliably. Nietzsche Johnson. Without those extra perimeter shooters that have a threat to make it from outside, the defense against South Carolina can just afford to smother CMB, Zach Davis, any of the wings when they get the ball inside. And that's creating a lot of havoc and pressure on this offense that they really can't come back from.
Yeah, definitely. And we got a question here from Travis, who's asking about Cam Scott. What's the story with him? Does he get some minutes every game? Yeah, he does play just about every game. I think the only one that I can recall he didn't play was the Auburn game. But he usually gets at most about 15 minutes. But, case like yesterday, got about 6 minutes. And he got in and did his job. I mean, 2 points, had one turnover in 6 minutes on 2 shots. But what have you been seeing from Cam? I know he hasn't played a lot. I thought he played decently fine, recently, but still just a lot to go because you're expecting so much of him.
Yeah, I mean, Cam is a freshman in the toughest basketball conference in recent history, and that shows. Having a team like this, especially with injuries, and forcing him to have to, I guess, play up to his level of a different level of competition. When South Carolina misses Jamari, South Carolina's got Studi out. Was he a top 40 prospect? Yes. But he has growing pains to go through, and he's going through maybe the worst defenses to have that against.
Yeah.
Mississippi State, Alabama even. If you're a freshman in the SEC playing basketball, and you've got to go up against a Chris Jans defense in your second conference game ever, that's not really a recipe for success.
No. I mean, here's the thing with him. He's a freshman. It's going to take time to get him going. And I know patience isn't exactly, for any fan, honestly, in general, or anyone, patience is something that we probably need all more of, to be honest. But with him, it's like, again, the comment right here from Craig with Cam being a liability on defense. Yes, that's part of why you haven't seen, all right, here's another example. Austin Hero yesterday, right? He only played 3 minutes yesterday. And, what seems to be the common thread of all these guys that, that we think could play but aren't playing? Defense. You have to be able to play defense in this conference. And if you're getting blown by, you're not playing well on both sides of the ball, you can be a great scorer, but you also need to have some defense. And in this case, when you're not scoring at a high clip, you see why Arden Conyers continues to play. His defense had to come along for a little bit. And even now, it's not perfect by any means, but, he's giving you 33 minutes, and that's because he's come along a little bit on defense, but he's also a good scorer. And so when you're not able to score, I feel like that makes it easier to be like, okay, if you're not going to play great defense, then you could probably sit a little bit more on the bench. I don't know. But, these guys that you have on the team right now that are very young, I feel like their moment will come at some point. If this season continues the way it is, I feel like you need to see what you've got with those guys. But then again, it's tough to, like LP has said before, it's tough to throw a guy who hasn't played at all into the SEC and make him play, 30 minutes. I mean, you're doing it with Arden Conyers right now, but then again, at least he's giving you some good minutes out there.
Yeah. I mean, Morris Ugasuk is never going to be the best defender on the team, but what he brings offensively is enough to justify him being in for 30 minutes a game. And you're not seeing that type of offense from Cam Scott, which is why he's sitting on the bench for most of the game. Same with Jordan Butler.
Yeah, and again, South Carolina I'm glad you brought up Butler because I want to bring up the evaluations on these guys. And I think everyone was probably on board with the guys that were brought in to kind of supplement what you had lost with Michi, Talon, BJ, Stephen Clark, guys like that you had lost from last year's team, with bringing in Nick Pringle, Cam Scott, obviously from a high school standpoint, Jamari, guys like that you brought in. I just feel like it hasn't really translated. I mean, do you feel that way too? Because with a guy like Nick Pringle, for instance, I mean, you're expecting more out of him. You're expecting him to be the complementary, forward in the front court to Colin Murray Boyles, but it just hasn't really. It hasn't been consistent enough for me to feel like, yeah, he's your reliable big man. He's got his moments for sure. He's got the size, but it's just when you're pulling in, it feels like 5 rebounds a game, and you're maybe having more fouls than points and turnovers and all that. I feel like that's an issue, and it's not just him. Jamari had his struggles too this season. Granted, I think he's been probably South Carolina's best transfer pickup this season, but when you got what you got with Talon, BJ, even Michi 2 years or 3 years ago, bringing him in for the first year of the Paris era. I mean, is it early to say that it kind of feels like, and maybe there's still a long way to go in the season, still 13 games and all that, but does it feel like right now, where things stand, that it was almost a swing and a miss, maybe? Like, how do you feel about the way everything's kind of shaped out?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the prospects in the portal that South Carolina looked after and they didn't get, whether it's Jordan Sears, Jameer Brickus, they haven't really excelled at their selected programs either.
Yeah.
And Sears is coming off the bench for a bad LSU team. But it might be fair to say last year was perhaps the perfect storm in terms of what Lamont could bring in and develop in his system. Talon, definitely the type of point guard that Lamont values. Jamari Thomas, not that exact type of point guard. Absolutely. He's really good at scoring. He can get the ball in the basket, but he's not that elite passer that Talon was.
Yeah.
Jacoby Wright, not a transfer pickup, but he's not that same level of mercurial scorer that Michi was.
Yeah.
Nick Pringle, I think if South Carolina didn't pick him up, where would they be at this point? That's fair to ask. But at the same time, his ability to not shoot the ball, or lack of ability to shoot the ball, has really killed the spacing on the offense.
Oh, totally. Because, and again, you are asking him to kind of play a type of role that he hadn't played before when he was at Alabama. And, I mean, look, size is not everything. We saw that the other day when, McLaughlin for Vanderbilt, blocked that shot at the end of the game on, Pringle going to the rim as the shot clock expired. And then you had the play that basically sealed the deal for Vanderbilt to win with the putback layup that on the rebound, Pringle got boxed out on by a guy who's 6'7", 3 inches shorter, 10 pounds heavier. Okay, whatever. And he puts it right back up, and it's an and one. Like, I think it's just that right there that's like, I don't know. There's still some time left to go. But you do make a good point, a good question. Like, where would this team be without Pringle? Honestly, like I hate, like I don't know. I like Nick and all that, but like I almost feel like BBV when he's out there, they provide somewhat of the same value because BBV is going to grab rebounds. He won't score a lot, but he's going to give you a lot of hustle, a lot of effort and all that stuff. And I'm not saying Nick doesn't. He definitely does. But BBV is giving you about some of the same production right now in a sense. Like, he's not that far behind playing 12 minutes. So, but that's what you expect from a guy like BBV. You expect more from Nick, and that's the standard that it should be held to because he's a good player. So I feel like it's just a lot of not fully being able to unlock what these guys can do. I don't know why that is. Maybe it's just something. I don't know what it is. But anyway, got a question here, and then we'll start talking about women's hoops here in a minute. But Jack Stevenson says, hey, guys, been an unquestionable tough start, and it's understandable. A lot are looking forward to next year with the incoming class. Curious your thoughts on what it is we can salvage for the rest of the season to seed some sort of momentum. Thanks, guys. All right. Appreciate the question. So, like it says, what can South Carolina do to salvage the rest of the season? Because, look, they got 13 games left to go in the regular season. You're 0-5 right now. You get Florida on Wednesday, then Mississippi State. I mean, look, this could very well be 0-7 before we know it. And then I mean, I don't know. I've started seeing comments about, like what's the longest losing streak in SEC basketball history and all that. It's like we're not there yet, but like, I mean, this team is not really giving you much confidence that they're going to be able to get it going. What can they do to get this thing right, in your opinion?
I think development is key. Last year, CMB, by the end of the season, was a completely different player compared to the beginning of it. Part of that was having mono, but maybe stringing together a few of those. How did that happen? Lamont Paris type of wins, as we saw with Kentucky in his first year, Gigi Jackson, Michi Johnson going to Rupp and beat them. Having that type of win this season could really recapture some of that momentum and good vibes. South Carolina has 7 games in a row where they play a ranked opponent. That's just an insanely tough schedule.
Yeah.
But that's also 7 opportunities for a ranked win.
Mm-hmm.
Will it happen? I don't know. I can tell you.
Yeah, it's gonna be tough sledding here. I think in reality, I think your next winnable game is it's probably actually a month from now when you play at LSU. And granted, I don't even know if that's a guarantee. I mean, right now, looking at KenPom, you're projected to go 13-18, 3-15 in SEC play. That's not going to help you make March Madness at all. That's missing the NIT too as well. And then you'll be in the SEC tournament, but you got to go on a run. You got to win the whole thing at that point to even make March Madness as a an auto bid. But I mean, your next stretch coming up here, you got Florida at home, Mississippi State at home, Georgia on the road, A&M at home, Kentucky at Rupp, Mississippi or Ole Miss at home, Florida on the road in Gainesville, and then you play LSU away. I mean, this schedule is it's brutal, man. It's brutal, and it's not to excuse South Carolina. It just feels like here's the way it feels, man. It's like, all right, you got the 15 other teams in this conference, and Arkansas is the other one who's severely underperforming for sure. Like under John Calipari, like it's been a mess out there, 0-5 out in Fayetteville. Did not expect that. But as for the rest of this conference, it feels like every team is just better right now. Like there's no real way around it. Like every team, despite what issues they have, it just seems like they are able to get through it. And I don't know. It just feels like South Carolina. It stinks that this is happening to them because it's like they got the talent. It's not coming together the way many thought. And also, it doesn't help that you're playing in a conference that is head and shoulders the toughest in college basketball this season. So a lot of things to just draw up a perfect storm of, what the season's been for South Carolina. And it's been a struggle. But, we'll see what happens. Maybe they can get it right. Maybe they just need to get a win. If they win on Wednesday against Florida, I think that doesn't change everything. But it gives you a little bit of hope that, like, okay, it's like the Clemson game. You win that game, gives you a little bit of momentum and shows that you can go out here and win one of these big games. Like, you haven't been able to do it yet, so we'll see if they can on Wednesday. All right, let's flip over the conversation to the women's side of things with Dawn Staley receiving a massive, massive contract extension. She is now going to be the highest paid coach in the history of the sport. And she signed an extension the other day worth $25.25 million over 5 years. That'll run her through the end of 2030. And it's just weeks before she turns 60 years old. I mean, this is massive. I think it's definitely due for her to be the highest paid coach in this sport without question. Like, where would women's basketball be without Dawn Staley in general, even when she was a player and stuff? Back in the WNBA days for her and whatnot, she's just an ambassador for the sport. And South Carolina, it's easy to think we ask, like, where would South Carolina be without Nick Pringle? In reality, actually, where would South Carolina in general, not even just women's basketball, the university in general, be without Dawn Staley? I mean, what are your thoughts on this extension, and what does it do for South Carolina moving forward?
Yeah, locking up Dawn with $25 million that's a lot of money, but every cent of that is earned. I mean, she has completely transformed the basketball environment. in Columbia, the entire region of the state seems to just rally around this program, and for good reason. I can't think of a larger cultural impact, sporting-wise, that a Columbia figurehead has made in this century. The women's program here, 38-0, and that is insane.
Yeah.
Something like 102-3 in the last 105 games.
My gosh.
There is an interesting addendum to the contract. If she were to leave for a WNBA or NBA coaching job, she wouldn't have to pay the extra money remaining on the contract back to the school.
Which is crazy. I think that's something you don't see too often.
If they're, I guess more so when there's the first NBA head coach that's a woman.
Yeah.
As much as I love Dawn Staley here and would want her to stay until she retires, she would be deserving of that title 10 times out of 10.
She would. And again, the men's game and women's game, I don't really know. I mean, just look, I cover enough basketball to just see it. I don't know. I don't know if it'd be like a significant change necessarily. I think she could do a good job. Again, she's just the coach. It's not like she has to go out on the court and play. But that's a conversation for down the road if we ever get to that point. But it would be really cool to see if she could become the first. And I know I see the jokes sometimes out there that she should just coach both teams at South Carolina, which hey, Lamont's doing a good job though. Like let's not have slander for him. He's doing a good job. It's just tough times right now for men's basketball. But anyway, so her salary is going to go from $3.2 million to $4 million now. And here's the good thing for her. That salary increases each year. So going till 2030, it'll increase by $250,000, and it'll end up at $5.25 million by the final year of the contract. And oh, by the way, there's also a signing bonus of $500,000, and there are also incentive bonuses of up to $680,000. So she is going to be making a boatload of money. And for her, it's not even about the money, though. It's also, I think the statement she had the other day was really good. It's not about the money for her, but it's also about what this means for, women's basketball and what this means for, women in general to get that type of money. And I think for someone like her, it's definitely earned, right? And I think she has done a fantastic job at South Carolina. Like, look at where the Gamecocks were her first year, 10-18, 2-12 in the league in 08 and 09. And then, they didn't get to the tournament until her fourth year when they went 25-10 and 11-12. And since then, it's been making the tournament every year and winning a few times over the years. So South Carolina's in good hands with her, obviously. And we'll see what happens moving forward. I do wonder if the thought of going to coach at the next level, like with an NBA team potentially ever crosses her mind. But for right now, it seems like she's going to be at South Carolina for at least through the rest of the decade, and then we'll see what happens from there. But, along with Dawn, look, South Carolina is playing very well right now from the women's side. Ever since that UCLA game, man, things have been looking really good for them. And, obviously they're coming off the win over Alabama. Has there been anything in particular that's kind of stood out to you about why they're playing so good right now?
For the last few games, I've been seeing a increase in production off the bench. I believe Full Wiley and Tessa had a great game against Alabama. Full Wiley and Joyce. I think Joyce dropped 21 maybe against the Tide. This team, I hate to say a loss is ever a good thing, but since that loss to UCLA, this team has really been clicking on all cylinders. They've been dismantling teams. I think the last time they had a single-digit game was against Duke, back before winter break. They look better on the court, more chemistry over the last few games. the loss of Ashland has impacted a bit, but Chloe Kitts has stepped up. I think another double-double against Alabama. She's been playing well.
Yeah, no, definitely. And look, that loss of Ashlyn Watkins, it's definitely a big blow for sure. Like, that's one of your big time players from last year's 38-0 season. And obviously you missed her at the beginning of the year and you were kind of able to get through. Obviously you lost to UCLA, but when you got her back, I mean, things continue to trend upwards, and losing her is definitely a big loss. Not to say you can't get through it. I mean, this is South Carolina women's basketball we're talking about, where, it's not just one player. It's the entire team that can go out there and do the thing. And when you got someone like Joyce Edwards coming off the bench and dropping 21 points against Bama the other day, like that's big time right there. To get 43 points off the bench in general, that's huge. And like you mentioned, getting Chloe Kitts to have a double with 10 points, 13 rebounds, 5 assists. I mean, that's what you want to see. And you're going to need more from your starting lineup, though. I'm not saying this team is, doomed by any stretch if they don't get it going from some players in particular. Like, you can't be having Bree Hall go 0 of 5 from the floor, Raven Johnson going 0 of 5 without any points or anything. I mean, that's you need your other players to come through a little bit more. But I think right now they're good enough to just get through, based on what they've done alone. And we'll see how the matchups fare in March Madness. I think they're going to end up being, I don't know if they'll be the top overall seed, but I think they're definitely going to be one of those 1 seeds come tournament time. I think UCLA is just still going to hang on as the top team in the country right now. But if South Carolina gets the right matchups, they could end up making a run all the way to definitely with a chance to go to the Final Four. And we'll see what happens. I mean, at the beginning of the year, I wasn't sure watching this team if they were going to be in contention to win a title again. But I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility they go back to back. I think it's very much possible. But again, I wonder if you face a team like UCLA again, what happens? Obviously you're going to strategize different for Lauren Betts, I would imagine, but you don't have Ashlyn Watkins, right? You have Chloe Kitts, Sanaya Fagan, players like that. I mean, can you figure out a way to stop her? Because I think if you face a team with a big, strong player like that, you might be in a little bit of trouble. But again, this is Dawn Staley. This is South Carolina we're talking about. Adjustments would be made, and I think they've got what it takes to get there. It's just can they get the matchups that they need to make it all the way?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to beat a team twice. It's extremely hard to beat a Dawn Staley coach team twice. I think in terms of what other teams can test Carolina, like UCLA did, there's maybe a short list of 3 or 4. I think South Carolina has shown that they can handle teams like Alabama, like Oklahoma in a few hours. LSU, they've got game day coming to town on Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
The difference between LSU and Carolina, as it was, I think, 2 years ago, South Carolina is battle tested. LSU is not. If you look at strength of schedule, South Carolina, Dawn Staley brought them cross country to play teams like TCU, UCLA. LSU maybe didn't really have that same method of scheduling. I will say if South Carolina plays UCLA again, Dawn's going to have to put that work in, strategizing. Players are going to have to play their A game. That's a very, very good women's basketball team. The Bruins might be the best team in the country this year.
Yeah.
But I do have faith in this team if they were to go up against the Bruins again.
Yeah, no, for sure. And before they face LSU on Thursday, I think that's going to be a great game, by the way. I'm hoping to get over to CLA for that. That'd be pretty cool just to watch that game. But you got Oklahoma in town today. And I think that is a game that I think most people expect South Carolina to be able to win. But for sure, it's still going to be a tough matchup. I mean, top 15 team in the country. Oklahoma should have Reagan Beers for this game. She's listed as probable on the SEC availability report. And the only one for South Carolina listed on there is obviously Ashlyn Watkins. But even even with Beers, I think the one player South Carolina really, really needs to slow down is Peyton Veerholst. I mean, 38 points the other night against Missouri, 13 to 19 shooting, 6 of 9 from 3-point range. I mean, dude, that's insane stuff. And when the rest of your team, I mean, the next highest scoring player is Sahara Williams with 5 points and 8 turnovers. Oh my gosh. When your best player is out there scoring 38 points, I mean, Reagan Beers is a very good player, but obviously Peyton Veerholst is killing it right now too. You got to be able to slow her down. And I think South Carolina will, obviously, as we've talked about this entire show with, the Lauren Betts situation and stuff, you'll have a plan for Veerholst here, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, one thing that does worry me about Oklahoma, they're a very good rebounding team. They're physical, and that very much aligns with how UCLA plays. If there's a team that is almost like a mirror image of UCLA, not really in terms of talent, but in terms of how they play and how they utilize their players, it's Oklahoma.
Yeah, no, definitely. And that game tips off at 3 p.m. today on ESPN, and we'll see. I think South Carolina, after this game, they obviously get LSU in the big matchup on Thursday. Obviously, I don't think there's going to be any overlooking, considering it is a top 15 showdown. And then, after that LSU game, you go to Tennessee. That's a much better Tennessee team this year for sure, with a new coach out there. And then, the other big showdown a lot of people are going to be looking forward to is the one on Super Bowl Sunday at Texas. And that was a game South Carolina won convincingly, I feel like last time, but still some ways to go. You get UConn and then Kentucky to close out the year, a very good Kentucky team. So we'll see how it goes. South Carolina is just on a roll right now, 17-1. Good times for the women's basketball team. New contracts being handed out, continuing to win games. Game day coming to town on Thursday. We'll have a lot to talk about this week from a women's standpoint. Obviously, the men, we'll see what happens. They play against Florida on Thursday. We'll have all coverage on GamecockCentral.com. If you're not already, go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you're watching on here, it takes you 2 seconds. Just hit the subscribe button. Doesn't cost you anything. Hit the thumbs up button if you're watching on Twitter, Facebook, wherever you're watching this, or wherever you get your podcasts. Definitely appreciate you hopping on, George. I think that's going to do it for us. Any final thoughts from anything we've talked about? Anything to give people hope about men's basketball maybe moving forward?
Yeah, man. I just miss Josh Gray.
I didn't expect to hear that. Josh is when you think about it, man, he really was a nice piece to have as someone that, he wasn't going to give you 30 minutes per game. He's a guy that can go in there and clog up and get some rebounds, though, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
and he's been starting for Missouri.
Yeah,
that's a good team too.
Yeah. Missouri's definitely a lot better than what South Carolina or just in general right now. A lot better than what they were last year. But we'll see what happens. So appreciate all you guys tuning in. As always, we'll be back again, or at least I will be talking hoops later this week. Appreciate all you guys again. Women's basketball is on at 3 p.m. today, and that's right. Let's go Bills. Bills are also on later today. So looking forward to it. Appreciate all you guys, and we'll see you again soon. Take care.